Are you ready for some good news? Jesus wants to be with you and you with him. And he wants it so much that not only did he leave glory, come to this earth, put on flesh, so that he could represent you and humanity as a sinless person and be crucified to bring about justice, to take our debt upon himself so that we could be forgiven. Not only that, but he has pledged to personally prepare a place for you in the Father's grand estate in heaven, and to personally come back and see to it that you get there so that he can be with you. That's the nature of the love of God. I've always been fascinated by last words, the final words before death. Some of them are funny, some are poignant. I had never seen this one before until this week. Pardon me, sir. It was actually, excusez-moi, monsieur. I did not mean to do it. They were the words of Marie Antoinette as she made her way up the scaffolding towards her execution by guillotine and accidentally stepped on the executioner's foot. Either this wallpaper goes or I do. Words credited to Oscar Wilde, who once had been wealthy in his fame but died penniless in a Paris hotel, where the longer context of it was, he said, there's a duel between me and this wallpaper to the death. John Adams died on July 4th and said, Thomas Jefferson survives, not knowing that Thomas Jefferson had himself died hours earlier. Stan Laurel of Laurel and Hardy comedy fame, last words, I'd rather be skiing. The nurse who was attending to him responded that she didn't know he even skied. He said, I don't, but I'd rather be skiing than this. And my all-time favorite, Bob Hope, when asked by his wife where he wanted to be buried, said, surprise me. We start a new series today in John chapters 14 to 17, and in some ways is Jesus' final words. It's sometimes called his final discourse, or maybe sometimes you'll hear it called the upper room discourse. We don't know for sure that this was spoken in that upper room where he celebrated the Passover, but we know that it likely was, and it's certainly the night before Jesus' own execution. So they're not really his last words, because of course Jesus has words from the cross, and Jesus has words after the resurrection, and Jesus is still speaking. But these chapters, John 14 to 17, are an up-close and personal look at the deepest reflections from the Son of God on the day before his death. Those kind of words have special power. And I've long wanted to preach a slow series just on these beautiful chapters. I'm going to call it Abide. I think that's the theme, our being with Jesus. Why go deeper into John 14 through 17? Well, several reasons. The first is that if you were with us through the spring, all the way through Easter, which came late this year, then you know we were in a series called The Untroubled Heart. It was our New Year's blessing, and it was something that the Lord had put down in my spirit, a great desire to learn all that I could and share all I can about how it is that the gospel and the presence of God can enable us to live a life without so much angst, because anxiety and depression have become epidemic. And that series was rooted right here in John chapter 14, do not let your hearts be troubled, where Jesus makes this offer of his own peace, a transfer of his peace, in a sense, to us. And while the series was long and deep and rich, in many ways, I want to say it's not really a series, it is a way of life. And so I felt drawn back to John chapter 14 and the chapters that follow. So in some ways, we're continuing all that we've been learning. And a second reason I'm really drawn into this is because I and others on our healing ministry team in recent years have been paying more attention to the theory of attachment that psychologists and sociologists speak of, and the importance of every child experiencing secure attachment from a loving parent or caregiver. They highlight that attachment includes these things: consistent presence, emotional attunement, safe haven, delight in the other, and confidence in love even when apart. And that if a child doesn't get those things, that there will be not only a deficit, but there will be generally an insecurity. And a lot of our healing ministry is directed towards this, because as we think about what it means to be a child of God, one way to understand that is simply to say it is attachment to God. It is the secure, loving connection to Christ Himself. And as I survey John chapters 14 through 17, I see it over and over in this upper room discourse. It is about attachment with Jesus. In my Father's house are many rooms. You have a place in the estate. We'll be looking at that. Verse 18 of chapter 14, I'll not leave you as orphans. Or verse 20, you in me, I in you. Do you see all of this language about attachment? John 15:4, abide in me and I in you. 16:33, in me you may have peace. It's found in this loving togetherness, real connection with Jesus. John 17:21, as He prayed that they may all be one in us. So I'm drawn in, and I want us to think about what it really means to be attached to God. And thirdly, and maybe most importantly, compellingly, I'm really drawn to John 14 through 17 because it is the most intimate, up close, and personal conversation recorded of Jesus with His disciples. It is a sacred privilege that I've had many times to be with saints who were nearing their transition to heaven, and they knew it. Sometimes people slowly drift out of consciousness and spend their final days in that where they're not really communicating. But sometimes people are aware that heaven is very near and that they're going soon, and yet they have all of their mental faculties. And when that happens, the veil between heaven and earth grows very thin, and there's something that's absolutely holy about it. I was thinking about a church leader and patriarch named Dale Kistler, who died many years ago. And Dale, some of you knew this old saint, was a very kind, a very gentle, demeanored man who had a very beautiful and quiet love for God and for people. But as Dale knew that heaven was very near for him, and yet he was of absolute sound mind, he began meeting with people, and I was able to observe some of it and see some of his interaction with his own family. And in a sense, it was like person after person that came, anyone who had the privilege to get a few moments with him in the closing days or hours. And I got to have a visit with him and hold his hand and look in his eyes. And it has something to do with the fact that at this point in one's life, at the end of life, all triviality and superficiality are gone. And what's left is only the essence of what really matters. And it's also that sense of the thinness between heaven and earth and the nearness of heaven. But whatever mystical means, in those moments, it was like Dale could see as clearly as he'd ever seen in his life. And for me, he blessed me, and prophesied over my future and gave me sound advice about several difficult church matters we were facing. Everyone who met with him came out as if they were glowing, as if they'd been in the presence of God, like there was some portal of heavenly revelation that was taking place. I think of that, and I think of John 14 through 17. Jesus was never trivial or distracted, but he also lived a life, a human life. There were times he was just celebrating with friends at a party. There were times he was taking naps in a boat. There were all kinds of moments in his life, but this is Jesus's time of knowing his death is the next day. And these chapters give you the most beautiful and powerful up-close look at what's most on the Messiah's heart. These words are worth studying. So let's just dive in and start with these first few verses. Let not your hearts be troubled. John 14 starts. Let not your heart. It means that you do have some agency in this. You do have some choice in the matter. It's not just an exhortation, it's an invitation, because inside of every command of Jesus, there is also a promise. If he says to a lame man, take up your mat and walk, then inside of the command is the power for the carrying out of the command. Let not your hearts be troubled. This is Jesus saying it is possible for you to live with an untroubled heart. And he's going to show you how and give you the grace for that and help you into it and give you the power for it. It's fascinating. I noticed this week that the word, let not your hearts, is actually in the singular, let not your heart. He is speaking almost as the collective heart of the people of God to all the disciples. Don't let you as a spiritual community, don't let yourselves become disheartened. Dale Bruner, one of my favorite commentators of the New Testament, beautifully paraphrases this as he reflects about how Jesus has just in the previous chapter acknowledged some really troubling things, that Peter would deny him, that Jesus would depart from them, and that one of them would betray him. Dale Bruner paraphrases this verse beautifully as if to say, Jesus saying, I know all these hard realities are understandably very depressing to you, but please don't let your heart be too troubled. You cannot trust your colleagues completely, and if you're wise, you cannot even trust yourselves completely, but remember the living God in whom you can trust completely, and remember me too, and trustworthiness in me. Don't give up. Don't be disheartened. This is remarkable leadership from Jesus. I really pause here to think about how in chapter 13 he tells them plainly troublesome things, but then he presents himself in what in leadership terms we call as a non-anxious presence. He doesn't gloss over or candy coat the real difficulties that they're facing. He is acknowledging and saying it's understandable that you would feel troubled when I talk to you about I'm going to be departing from you or that somebody's going to betray me. I understand these things could be very troubling. So in a very real way, what he's doing, and this is what all great leaders do, is they are with people. They're connected enough. They connect before they correct. They are with them in such a way that there's an empathy. They empathize before exhorting. And that's what Jesus is doing. But he's also practicing what in leadership we call differentiation, meaning he knows who he is, he knows where he's going, he knows where he's going to lead. And so though he's with, he is not codependent. He is not going to change his pattern or his direction or his calling simply out of his compassion for them. He's both. Not let your hearts be troubled. And he says this at the second half of that verse, believe in God, believe also in me. Trust might be a better word. Dale Bruner paraphrases it this way, believe into God, believe into me too. Please Take your eyes off yourselves for a moment, off your own fallibility, your shortcomings, and the weakness of your companions. My Father is here, alive and trustworthy. I am here too. You can trust me. Please do. The little word that's usually just translated believe in Greek usually is translated into. And I kind of like that, believe into, like saying lean into all of who God is. And note this well, Jesus is here affirming his divinity. He is saying that you have been able to believe in a God, the creator of the ends of the earth, who you have not seen nor touched. And now you've seen me and you've touched me. And in that same way, you can believe and trust in me. He's saying, I am God in the flesh. Believing is the focus of the first half of chapter 14, where the words for belief is repeated 6 times. But then in the second half of this chapter, the word that gets repeated is love, agapao. It is repeated, I think, about 8 times in verses 15 to 24. So there is a connection between trust and love, that there's a way that faith opens up the heart to receive the love of God and to know the love of God. Later in his life, John summarizes this in his first epistle, and this is his commandment, that we believe in the name of his Son, Jesus Christ, and love one another. Trusting and loving, wrapped up together. Verse 2, in my Father's house are many rooms. Bruner says it this way, on my Father's estate there are many homes. I like that because the word for rooms in Greek here, meno, is only used twice in the New Testament. And it is closely related to the word meno that means to abide. And so you might think of them really saying abiding places. And the notion here is not really so much, we talk about it often, about the mansion that you'll have, although I anticipate a mansion, but it is about the withness, the abiding with God, that there is a specially prepared place for you and your abiding place. So it's like a huge grand estate, and God is spending time adopting many so that they will become heirs, and all the heirs have a place of living together in this grand estate called heaven. I go to prepare a place for you, verse 2. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? Well, someone has said that Jesus is going is also a coming, because he's coming back to glory and coming back to the Father, even as he's preparing a place for you. It's a profound and tender truth to think that Jesus left this world in part to actively, lovingly, personally ready a place for you in the heavens. What this means is that when we get to heaven, there will be awe and, I suppose, surprise, because we've never seen anything like that. And yet, on the other hand, it's going to be like, oh, this is where I belong. You will have never felt more at home than when you first enter heaven. I prepare a place for you. It's like you wake up into the glory of what you were always destined to be in. There's something in this world that doesn't quite fit, right? I think the illustration was first given by Peter Marshall, I'm not sure, but I've said it many times as I thought about in my own life, how as a kid, we would go over to my grandparents' house every Sunday evening. She would fix the fancy food like roast beef and lamb chops that we normally never had. Then we would watch the wonderful world of Disney and we'd drive home. It wasn't a long drive, but for a little child, a short drive as it begins to get late on a Sunday night can seem pretty long. And oftentimes I'd fall asleep on the way home. And on more than one occasion, I would not wake up, but my dad would just pick me up and carry me inside, put me in my bed. And the next morning I'd wake up in the light, and there I was at home. And I think in a lot of ways, that's what it's going to be like when we die, is that God's strong arms have lifted us up out of our sleep. And when we wake up, you'll feel like, wow, this has been prepared for me. It means that Jesus knows you well. I think that he knows that I'm trying to learn to play the guitar better than I ever have, and it's not going that fast. And so I don't think I'm going to get done, and I'm going to have to keep learning in heaven. So I think he's going to have a guitar stand with my Martin D28 ready to go for me. And if you like to swim, I suppose he's pouring the concrete on your swimming pool. I will probably need a big enough garage to house a golf cart. I'm speaking here in earthly terms, but hopefully you're seeing this in its spiritual implication, that everything that is needed for heaven to be your abiding place that feels like home, Jesus is preparing that. He's entered into the heavenlies once and for all and spread his own sprinkled blood so that you would have the guarantee of never being rejected by God, but being with God. But he's doing more than that. He is actively, mystically preparing the uniqueness of it for you. It reminds me of Anne's beautiful instinct for hospitality and how it is that if we have a guest to come into our home, she begins thinking about it days in advance. We had a couple of guests with us last weekend, Kenny and Russell, who came and did a little concert and storytelling at the village campus, and they spent the night with us. They came whisking into town while they're on a brisk tour of about 15 cities. But for Anne, she'd been thinking about it for days. We had been to the store and we had bought food for dinner, but also the kind of snacks and things to have around. And we had not only been cleaning the house and getting ready for them and getting sheets on their beds and preparing their rooms, but I had my own honey-do list, making sure that things were well swept outside. And she'd been at a store and found little soaps that were fragrant, that were wrapped up, that were made especially for our area and said Winston-Salem on there. Oh, they would like that. And they're all set out. The spirit of hospitality is thinking about the one who is going to arrive. And God lives in a spirit of that hospitality. It's his nature. It is staggering to think of it, but the Son of God in eternal glory is thinking about your place in the eternal kingdom so that you will feel at home with him. And if I go and prepare a place for you, verse 3, I will come again. If you can believe that Jesus is preparing for you, then if you can believe that, then you can believe he'll come back. Because why would he go to all the trouble to make such elaborate preparation if he did not intend to come back and assure that you would be there with him? There's a difference between someone offering, yeah, you could stay at our place, versus personally escorting them and transporting them. It's one thing to say, yeah, you're welcome to visit. It's another to say, I'm going to come get you myself. When Bennett was in college in Texas, oftentimes he would make a flight back and forth to come back home for fall break or family celebrations, whatnot. But at the end of the school year, when he had to pack up everything and then come back home, really come back home for the summer, I would fly out to Waco, Texas, and help him get everything loaded up and drive back on the long drive with him to bring him home. We're not going to find our own way to heaven, but he comes back. And I think that his coming here could be understood in three ways. The first is that he's going to come to them after the resurrection. Like in John 14:19, yet a little while and the world will see me no more, but you will see me. I think maybe he's talking about you'll see me raised from the dead. But then also he's speaking of the coming of the Holy Spirit, which we're going to talk much of in this series because he talks much of the Spirit in these chapters, the coming of the Spirit. Verse 25, these things I've spoken to you while I'm still with you, but the Helper, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, he'll teach you all things. So he's going to come again to them in the person of the Holy Spirit. But of course, he's also speaking of his return at the consummation of the age, of the parousia, we call it, where he comes again, and you could call it his second coming or his final coming. And there'll be a new heaven and a new earth, and we'll reign forever with him. That where I am, you may be also, verse 3. So he's sharing his deepest desires, and more than anything, what he wants is for you to be with him where he is. Wherever he is, that's where he wants you. What I'm saying is that you're getting a look here in this final discourse of Jesus, in these tender words, a look of the most visceral yearning of the Son of God. And it is for his disciples, for his friends, to be with him. Now, we're treading into deep mysteries here, but this is the very nature of God's heart. It is a way that God feels. It is to say what he desires and what he wills, and that is to be with you, to be with his people. That's what he wants. This week is a very special week in our family's life because it's our annual beach trip with the extended family on Ann's side. We've been doing this trip forever, before any of the kids or grandkids were born, and it's going to be a big week. We've got niece Anna Catherine flying in from her new home in California. Abby's flying in from Washington, D.C. We've got Ann's younger sister, Mary, had 4 kids. One of them, Richard's going to be able to make it for some of the time. We've got a grandbaby and our nephew, Jake. They've got 2 children now. One's a new baby that has been named after Ann's dad, Graham. And it's going to be wild. 2 houses full of people. And there'll be a lot of fun, and looks like it's going to be pretty good weather. All that's going to be good. But what really the trip's about is the being with one another. And I've got so many memories of this trip. And as soon as I think about the joy of being with, you also have that part of you that is aware of those that won't be with you. Anne had a beautiful younger sister named Mary, who died young, when her 4 children were young. And while Mary was alive, and they'd come on the beach trip, she and Joe and the kids, one year. And when you got 4 little kids, and that's your life, she was a great mom. But you look forward to that beach trip, just adult interaction and a little bit of help with the kids. And a couple of the kids got really sick that week, and it just ended up being the best thing. They just had to go home early. And I'll never forget, we're down saying goodbye to them and watching them back away out of that driveway. And I'm looking in the car, and just Mary had tears just streaming down her face. I looked over at my wife. She had tears coming down. It was just so, it was the right decision, but I remember it was just so sad. And we could have never known that within a few years, we wouldn't have Mary coming on that trip. She'd gone to heaven. But we'd always be all together, and this year we won't have Ann's dad. He's in heaven, and we'll be thinking, I'm saying, about all of that. Graham would always have this little game we play, like when you catch really good weather, and it's like, it feels like it's 75 degrees with a gentle ocean breeze. And he'd have this thing, he'd go, "What do you think, Alan?" He says, "Is this 1 degree too warm, or is it 1 degree too cool?" It was his way of saying, aren't we blessed? And doesn't this feel nearly perfect right now when we play that game? And so somebody will bring that up. And And Graham would always go every morning to Big Nails and bring back biscuits for everybody. And in his absence, our nephew Richard said he was going to get the biscuits this year. But we'll think about Graham. We'll think about those that aren't there. We'll think about Mimi when we don't have her chocolate cake that everybody loved and devoured within the first couple of days of the beach trip. The trip will be wonderful. But what I'm saying is, do you understand that our hearts will also quietly ache because we can't be fully and finally happy until we have all of our people all together? That's the beach trip we really want. What I think you're seeing in this upper room discourse is that this is the heart of Jesus. He's saying, I want you to be where I am. This is the most important thing. What he is primarily wanting to say to them in his last and most beautiful and deep conversation with them is, it's not so much about, I care what you do for me. It's not even so much about your grand mission in the world. Oh, that's important. It's not about any of those things. It's about being with you forever. And I don't want you to worry about this, because the whole plan of the Father and the whole pledge that I'm making to you is that though you're not going to see me for a little while, you will see me resurrected, and then the Holy Spirit will come, and you'll know when the Spirit is speaking to you that it is I that's speaking to you, but I'm with you spiritually. But you also need to know that I'm going to come back, and I'm going to guarantee that you'll be with me where I am in eternal glory, because in my Father's estate, there are many abiding places, and every adopted child of God is an heir, and there is going to be a specially prepared place just for you. And I'm guaranteeing that to you with my life and death and resurrection, and I'm giving you my word on this. And what I want you to see as my own heart is that I want nothing more than to be with you, to be connected with you, to be attached with you now and forevermore. Abide is what I've called this sermon series, because that's really what God cares about most. We're going to learn a lot of other matters that are on Jesus' heart, but this is where it starts and this is where it stays, is that he wants you with him where he is. So, the family beach trip, I could say, is not the same without Granddaddy and Mimi and Mary. But it's also now filling up with Mia and Maddie and little Graham and spouses that weren't there at one time. And you could envision a time to come where we got everybody. And if you could envision what that would be like, now you've come very close to understanding heaven, and you've come very close to understanding the heart of Jesus. His invitation is not for you to do for him, but to be with him. It's what he wants the most. And it's possible because of his death and resurrection and glory. And that's the gospel.